This is the Digital Savage Experience Podcast, hosted by Roman Prokopchuk, bringing you all things digital marketing, tech, business, and motivation. What's stopping you from becoming relentless in all aspects of life? Are you ready to become a digital savage? Let's get into today's episode.
Hey everyone, this is Roman Prokopchuk, and this is the Digital Savage Experience, episode 17. My analysis of Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg's testifying before Congress today on April 10th. So the whole thing was kind of drawn out and kind of comical. I mean, it shows one thing more so in terms of Congress. Congress actually has to get younger and more tech savvy, or United States is going to be in trouble because some of the questions that were asked are ridiculous. But anyway, so some of the things that Mark Zuckerberg answered were a little out there as well and kind of dodgy in terms of not giving direct answers to maybe not be subject to specific regulations or identifying other issues that may be going on, but it is what it is. He's defending his company. So the main point of the hearing were the data breaches with Cambridge Analytica, which they actually bought the data not from Facebook or got it from Facebook, but got it from a app developer that received the data through an app and then sold the data to them. And they used it apparently or allegedly in terms of working with Russia and with the Trump campaign in terms of better ad targeting. Now, this is going to tie into the whole advertising debate, but I personally think that wasn't necessarily the issue. The Democrats alluded to more so that kind of Trump won because of this, but that's one platform that they were on. Granted, there may have been Russian meddling in terms of trolls and propaganda ads on other platforms, but that's highly unlikely if you're going to attribute just the victory of Trump to social media. So Senate needs more kind of understanding of tech, social, and advertising as a whole. So these three kind of points were very, very hard to discuss in terms of understanding with the Senate members. So they made it a point to bring up the election meddling with Russia, which in my opinion, viewing the campaign was minimal, but according to some of the proposed numbers, it was higher than I thought, but who really knows, honestly. For the purpose of the hearing, it was high, but the whole Russia meddling, I don't think, even if you want to segue away from this, that it wasn't that much of an issue. Like, if you actually understand social media and advertising, granted, Hillary Clinton was ahead of Trump most of the way. I technically could have put money on Trump winning based on what he was doing. So some of his events in terms of live streaming were 2-3 times as much viewed as Hillary Clinton. There were more engagement and more interaction from the fans and the followers on numerous platforms, not only Facebook. So it was kind of evident in terms of demonstrating the power of Trump's team, whether it be help from foreign countries, this mysterious data or what have you. He actually did a better job of targeting and reaching the people he needed to reach. I personally know a lot of affiliate marketers that were driving relevant traffic to Trump and kind of utilizing that channel. And he actually spoke about it during and after the election in terms of affiliate marketers helping him out. So I think there's tools and professions that Trump utilized that Hillary didn't even think about because she thought she had the election in the bag. But Trump was kind of a beast on social. He had better metrics than Hillary, like I said. But the other thing that was also mentioned, that the investigation of Facebook should go past this election in terms of meddling of the Trump election, but go all the way back to Obama. See, it wasn't as looked at or frowned upon, but there's Obama staff members that said they pulled a lot of data from Facebook that actually helped them dominate on Facebook and ads targeting that helped them win the election against Mitt Romney, and that was never really addressed. So it was nice to see that it was, both elections are going back to the fact of where this actually happened in terms of data breaches and data improperly being used. So Zuckerberg's opening statement, he kind of read the whole way, and it wasn't as genuine as I thought. He didn't really have to look at it and keep looking up. He was really nervous. If you look at it, I think he was actually intimidated. The funny thing is, Facebook is kind of arrogant also, because if you look at any other hearings that were already had in other countries, take a look at the hearing of the Facebook executives in Singapore. It is quite funny and comical because the Facebook ad executives say that don't ask me irrelevant questions, this is irrelevant, let's talk about the stuff we want to talk about, and they kind of got shut down and were kind of cocky about what's relevant or what's not relevant to the conversation of data breaches around the world. So that was kind of interesting. Obviously, he was going to show up himself to the U.S. Senate, but he kind of has, cronies around the world in terms of executives in each country show up and represent before hearing committees in other countries and kind of defend the fact that they didn't know or they didn't understand what was going on. So when Facebook is making money, it's all good. So, their ad targeting platform and their development of understanding and drilling down into different audience segments really is a good targeting option in terms of social and paid in general. So it's made them quite a lot of money. So manipulating things like race, ethnicity, religion, which may be a little biased, obviously, in terms of ads and discriminatory, that was able to be run for years and years until they just recently removed some of those features. So I think when the money's coming, it's coming. So when it's all good and nobody says anything about it, let's make more money. When, let's point this out. It's a no-no. Let's say we did this, we took it out, we're aware of it. So Zuckerberg's main thing is app security in terms of this conversation with the U.S. Senate. Basically, hiring or having up to 20,000 content reviewers. Recently are already hitting that number, native speaking to specific languages. So, I guess it's a good start, but something still, slipped through the cracks or can slip through the cracks. There were several proposed government regulations that, like I said, Zuckerberg tried to skirt around because if he made something evident, it would maybe open him up to legislation and regulation that will obviously hurt his stakeholders and make it more stringent in terms of operation. So he avoided a lot of yes and no answers. Some questions were a little bit more cut and dry in terms of yes or no, but some of which needed more explaining because the way the senators kind of positioned tech questions was a little bit irrelevant or a little out there, which is understandable because a lot of them are 60, 70 years old with not that much understanding in terms of the tech scene or functionality of social. There were a lot of Facebook censorship concerns, primarily by Ted Cruz, which is a Republican of bias on political censorship as well. So Republican-leaning websites and pages deemed inappropriate and offensive and taken down, some of which have members of, let's say 1 million users, while others on the far right that technically promoted or advocated things that may not be applicable or in the same light were allowed. So just the kind of understanding that Facebook, is it truly being neutral in terms of free speech? Is it exercising its amendment rights in terms of taking a position and speaking in terms of what they believe as their political views, which obviously they're in Silicon Valley, headquartered in California, so it's going to be very left-leaning in terms of a liberal view. But I mean, I've seen a lot of the censorship. I've seen on other platforms as well, so YouTube, so things that, somewhat of a conservative view and have a large following that isn't necessarily propaganda, but is factual, pages and channels being suspended and things of that nature. So if you're going to talk about privacy and, user safety and propaganda and things of that nature, then play the field equally. And if you're not going to do that, then straight up say, hey, I'm liberal, so on and so forth. But, I mean, it is what it is. So the content policy enforcement is an issue. In terms of neutral content policy, there was another question about the 20,000 content reviewers that were hired or are going to be hired. Are they screened for political views? Because obviously if something is flagged to a reviewer, and that specific reviewer gets the review, if they're, let's say, left-leaning and they see something that's a potential to reach, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million people, but is very conservative and contradicts something in terms of their beliefs or something that's going on in terms of mainstream or the news, they may choose to flag it or remove it, which obviously is problematic because you're influencing decisions and not playing an even playing field, which obviously is done in other media like news. You have Fox News that's very right-leaning, you have CNN that's left-leaning, and so on and so forth, and the way that the news are portrayed, which obviously also through social media, a lot of people get their news, so the issue with the propaganda is that you can influence the people in terms of manipulating to whatever decision making you want them to do for whatever event or whatever election, which I think happens all over the world regardless, and I think happens in traditional media and TV, because I mean it's alright to show ads in terms of TV that kind of portray positives and negatives about candidates, but some of the same things aren't adequate for social. And I think if you ran a Republican versus Democrat ad that was just as positive and negative, a lot of the issues with the Republican ads would be flagged or not distributed to a wider population set. A lot of talk was around regulating Facebook and Facebook trying to get over it, or like Mark Zuckerberg had a little smart comment in terms of they're so big that it wouldn't matter. They can adapt to it and make the changes a lot easier than a smaller company. I kind of beg to differ, because if there's a tech company, let's say a social platform, let's say has 1 million users, 100,000 users, and it comes out that there's laws created to regulate all of the social media or paid advertising platforms. So let's group Bing, Yahoo, or Bing, Microsoft, put together, obviously Microsoft, Google, Twitter, Snapchat, everybody and their mother basically abides by the same rules now and gets punished for the same things that a smaller company can't abide to their basically the rules themselves because they're so small. Well, if you're small, you're more nimble. You don't necessarily have to go through like a lot of the processes and internal issues to get things done as well. So I don't know if I really agree with that. The funny question is, some of the senators were asking, is Facebook a tech company, a publisher? They wanted to kind of pigeonhole Mark Zuckerberg into admitting that they were a publisher of content, which theoretically in the past I would disagree, because there's other platforms out there that support, they're the mechanism or the delivery mechanism or delivery tool, and people's content is still individual user-generated content added to the platform. So Facebook doesn't own your data, it just uses it in terms of, if you have it open, in terms of privacy settings, get information on you for advertisers or third parties to target ads on Facebook or their partners to you. So with the answer of Facebook is a tech company may have avoided some possible regulations or bills that may have been written if Facebook was more deemed as a publisher. But the whole publisher argument, so Facebook got into heavy video, not too long ago. So if you want to talk about publisher of video content to compete with YouTube and the Netflixes and the Hulus with creating unique content. So they have Facebook Watch now, where there's shows and Facebook specific hosted content with series and original series and reality show, like the family, in terms of like the basketball family, the Ball family with Lonzo Ball and LeVar Ball and things of that nature. So they are creating content in terms of video. So, but that kind of skirts away from the main question. Facebook also had a question, or Mark Zuckerberg had a question about Facebook, where if they're using your everyday voice or tools on your phone, if you're just have your phone on and you're talking, if Facebook can capture the actual audio and then turn it into somehow understanding it and using it for targeting options. So one of the senators had an example about chocolate. He was thinking about chocolate, said something about chocolate, got onto Facebook, and he saw an ad for chocolate. That's one of those kind of like targeting urban legends that Mark Zuckerberg kind of disproved. He said no, but obviously with advances in voice technology and these kind of data breaches and other misconduct by Facebook and possibly by other social networks, I mean, I wouldn't rule it past them in terms of capturing something. It may not be that detailed, but just capturing some data via just kind of your audio on your phone itself, which, I mean, I don't think in 2018 is that far-fetched. One of the interesting points were made by Senator Tillis, which is the senator from North Carolina. I didn't know that he was in data science, data storage, data analytics for a while. He posed a lot of interesting points in terms of the original point I made about going back for the data breaches or the types of data that were taken that may have been on party lines to influence elections before the Trump election. So he's the one that made the assertion to go back to the Obama election against Romney, where there was Obama staffers and the marketing team tweeting that, we got all of Facebook's, social graph, or got the information readily available and they knew we were doing it, but, they didn't stop us. So regardless if how you feel about Obama or how you feel about Trump, if you're going to apply one thing to one, you're going to apply the same thing to another. It should be neutral targeting in terms of ads, neutral, unbiased information in terms of the type of things you see in your timeline from whoever you follow and not follow. You shouldn't be restricted if you follow a conservative page, a liberal page, unless you're following something in terms of, hateful propaganda, then that's an issue. But if you're strictly following, let's say, 5 conservative pages and 5 liberal pages, and you're seeing the content of the liberal pages in your timeline or on your feed 50% more, and they're the same size in terms of page followers and basically the frequency of posting of the content, the type of content, and more people are being reached on an organic level, then I think that's a bias and that's an issue that needs to be looked at. So in terms of who had the most kind of educated or thought-provoking questions, I would give that to Senator Tillis. Cruz went in on the whole privacy and censorship thing. There's a few other senators that kind of use scare tactics. I think in general, Mark Zuckerberg's body language was